UHD quality video streaming, internet like a boss. SLT Mobitel Fiber. UHD quality video streaming, internet like a boss. SLT Mobitel Fiber.
රින් වෙළඳපොලේ අඩුම මිලකට රුපියල් 199යි.
Tonight, who's responsible? Former Defence Secretary and the former IGP acquitted from the surtax case. No other way. Energy Minister calls for fuel taxes to be slashed to keep the CPC in business. No gremlins. The central bank governor drops a hint on fuel prices.
There is now indication that the government would be looking at an increase in the fuel prices.
Also brushes off calls to abandon pegging the rupee.
The rate at which the Sri Lankan rupee is trading today is a fair one.
Return of sporadic darkness. Power cuts worked off.
More than 400 megawatts generators are out of order at the moment. Today's issue is that the CB was unable to purchase necessary diesel, naphtha and furnace oil.
All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Friday, the 18th of February, 2022.
Nelly, මතකෙන් ගිලිහුණු black shiny කෙස් කලඹක රහස Sunsilk Black Shine සමගින්.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, welcome to First at 9. I'm Dham Kekanayak. Central Bank Governor Ajit Nimad Cabral today noted that the government has indicated it will move towards a fuel price hike. In an interview, he also brushed off suggestions that the rupee exchange rate must not be controlled, insisting that the present rate is fair. On the prospect of approaching the International Monetary Fund, the central bank governor pointed to various indicators and questioned as to what else the IMF could do other than what the government has already done and plan on doing.
Governor of the Central Bank Ajit Nimad Cabral was asked during an interview with Bloomberg whether he agrees with the claim that the pegged rate of the Sri Lankan rupee at 202.99 is not sustainable.
Sometimes the market conditions that people look at are only the trade markets. But we got to look at the markets a little bit beyond. We got to see what is the debt market like, what is the remittances market like, what is the government transactions market like, what are the other factors that are definitely impacted by the rate of the exchange. So therefore, when you look at all those areas, I think the rate at which the Sri Lankan rupee is trading today is a fair one. It provides opportunities for all stakeholders. And I think sometimes, although people look at it from certain angles and they believe that the exchange rate should be different, we from the central bank take a holistic view, and then as a result we are able to see it at the reasonably good places so that people will be able to do all their transactions in a fair and a good manner so that we can go forward with greater confidence.
The central bank governor was also quizzed as to whether the rates should be further hiked to support the currency, with the island's inflation also being among the fastest in the region.
We are also as concerned as anyone else about the inflation, but we have also observed that the main element of the inflation is really import driven. We are seeing the effects of commodity prices impacting the Sri Lankan inflation rates, and therefore we have been reluctant to increase it too much. But as you know, at the last monetary policy review, we did increase the interest rates. And we now see that after the adjustment, the markets are behaving in a fairly confident manner, which shows that the rate increase has now been already taken into consideration by the market. So I think right now, the rates are appropriate and we would watch it. And if that needs any further adjustment, we are ready to do so.
Then came the all too familiar question. Is the governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka remain opposed to approaching the International Monetary Fund?
I'm looking at the investor confidence, which is a very important factor. All our bond auctions have been fully subscribed and the interest rates are moderating. Our stock market is one of the best performing markets when you look at the whole year round this time. When you look at Sri Lanka's GDP growth, it's growing at 5% this year. We're seeing tourism coming back. We're seeing the general conditions of the banking sector also in good shape. So I think investor confidence is there. So we don't really need to add too much to the investor confidence, because if we are saying that we need to go to the IMF to boost investor confidence. What more could it do? We are having our bonds subscribed. We are seeing that our growth is back. We are seeing the tourists coming back. We are seeing the overall economy in a fairly stable manner. So I think that's important for us to recognize. And we are also doing certain changes in our economy, particularly the fuel prices. There is now an indication that the government would be looking at an increase in the fuel prices, which is what IMF also would have naturally come and perhaps advised us to do.
Governor Cabral also urged G20 countries to be more sensitive towards issues of emerging markets and recognizing them realistically without limiting them to paper.
Sometimes the sensitivity of G20 hasn't been sufficient, in my view, to the emerging markets issues as well. And I think a global viewpoint is extremely important for us to recognize. And that if you do, the sensitivities with regard to debt repayments, sensitivity with regard to funds flows, as well as funds outflows, all those need to be looked at by the richer countries so that those issues will be considered in moving forward. That's an area that we need to all recognize and ensure that it does happen on the ground rather than only on paper, that's as sometimes we see it happening.
Now then, the Minister of Energy, Uday Gammanpilla, has made a written request to the Minister of Finance to remove the taxes imposed on petrol and diesel so the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation can stay in business. Addressing a media briefing today, the Minister lamented the CPC incurring 500 million rupees in losses on a daily basis at prevailing prices. He added that the central bank has proposed a fuel price hike as well.
තෙල් සංස්ථාවේ ගණනය කිරීම අනුව පෙට්‍රල් 92 ලීටරයකින් රුපියල් 19ක්, පෙට්‍රල් 95 ලීටරයකින් රුපියල් 17ක්, ඩීසල් ලීටරයකින් රුපියල් 52ක්, සුපිරි ඩීසල් ලීටරයකින් රුපියල් 35ක්, භූමි තෙල් ලීටරයකින් රුපියල් 63ක් අලාභ ලැබමින් තමයි තෙල් විකිණීම සිදු කරන්නේ. ඒ අනුව එක් දිනකට සංස්ථාව ලබන පාඩුව රුපියල් මිලියන 551ක්. සංස්ථාවට මේ ආකාරයට තවදුරටත් තෙල් වෙළඳාමේ යෙදී සිටින්න බැරි වෙනවා. ඩොලර් මිලදී ගැනීමට අවශ්‍ය රුපියල් ලබා දිය නොහැකි නම් තෙල් ආනයනය සඳහා ඩොලර් ලබා දිය නොහැකි කියලා ශ්‍රී ලංකා මහා බැංකුවේ අධිපතිතුමන් ජනවාරි මාසේ 28 වෙනිදා ලිඛිතව මට දැනුම් දීමක් සිදු කරලා තියෙනවා. මේ තත්ත්වය මත ඩොලර් නැතිවීම කෙසේ වෙතත් රුපියල් නැතිවීම මත නුදුරු දිනක තෙල් හිගයක් රටේ ඇතිවීමේ බරපතල අවදානමක් පවතිනවා. මේ අතරේ සංස්ථාවේ ගණනය කිරීම අනුව පෙට්‍රල් 92 ලීටරයක් මත රුපියල් 42ක්, පෙට්‍රල් 95 ලීටරයක් මත රුපියල් 64ක්, ඩීසල් ලීටරයක් මත රුපියල් 17ක්, සුපිරි ඩීසල් ලීටරයක් මත රුපියල් 39ක් යනාදී වශයෙන් බදු පනවා තිබෙනවා. මේ බදු මගින් දිනකට රුපියල් මිලියන 368ක් මුදල් අමාත්‍යාංශයේ උපයා ගනු ලබනවා. මෙම බදු සියල්ල ඉවත් කළොත් සංස්ථාව දෛනිකව ලබන රුපියල් මිලියන 551 පාඩුවෙන් රුපියල් මිලියන 368ක් කියන්නේ සැලකිය යුතු ප්‍රමාණයක් ආවරණය කරගන්න පුළුවන් වෙනවා. ඒ නිසා අද දින මම ඉන්ධන මත පනවා ඇති බදු ඉවත් කර දෙන මෙන් මුදල් අමාත්‍යතුමාගෙන් ලිඛිත ඉල්ලීමක් සිදු කළා. එතකොට මේ බදු සියල්ල ඉවත් කරත් අපිට තව ආවරණය කරගන්න ප්‍රමාණයක් තියෙනවා. ඉතින් අපි ජනතාව මත මේ සමස්ත බර පටවන්නේ නැතුව අපි උත්සාහ කරන්නේ බදු ඉවත් කර ගැනීම හරහා මේ විශාල ප්‍රමාණයක් ආවරණය කරගන්න. ඊට පස්සේ අපි බලනවා මිල වැඩි කිරීමක් කොයි ආකාරයට කරන්න සිද්ධ වෙනවද කියලා.
Meanwhile, Minister of Energy Uday Gammanpilla also commented on the Ceylon Electricity Board's debt owed by the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation.
අපිට ඒ අය රුපියල් බිලියන 20ක මුදලක් පැරණි ණය වෙනුවෙන් ගෙව්වා. ඒත් තවමත් රුපියල් බිලියන 80ක් තියෙනවා. අපි බැංකු වලට මෙච්චර ණය වෙන්න එක ප්‍රධාන හේතුවක් තමයි විදුලි බල මණ්ඩලයත් ශ්‍රී ලංකන් ගුවන් සමාගමත් දිගින් දිගට ණයට ගන්නව මුදල් ගෙවන්න නැතුව. ඒ නිසා මම දැඩි තීන්දුවක් ගත්තා. අපි ඉතාලම අඩු මිලට තෙල් වික්කේ ආයතන වලට. අපි මිල ඉහළ දැම්මා. රුපියල් 70ට විකුණු දැවි තෙල් රුපියල් 110 දක්වා අපි මිල ඉහළ දැම්මා. හරන එකත් 130ක්වත් වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒ වගේම තවදුරටත් ණය වර්ධනය වෙන එක නතර කරා. ශ්‍රී ලංකන් ගුවන් සමාගමට දැනුම් දුන්නා ඩොලර් දුන්නොත් තෙල් දෙන්නම් කියලා. අපි විදුලි බල මණ්ඩලයට එහෙම කිව්වා. එයාට තියෙන ඩොලර් හොයාගන්න බැරි වුණාම රට අඳුරේ තියන්න බැරි ඉඳන් අපි එයාට කියලා තියෙනවා අපිට රුපියල් දෙන්න. අපි තෙල් දෙන්නම් පුළුවන් විදියට කියලා. එයාගේ සමහර විදුලි බලාගාර වලට තෙල් නොලැබුණා කියලා කියනවනේ. ඒකට එකම හේතුව එයා අවශ්‍ය රුපියල් සැපීමට අසමත් වීම.
In the meantime, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has written to the Ministry of Energy on maintaining CPC's rupee liquidity.
As per available data, the losses of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation stand at approximately 77.4 billion rupees as at November 2021. 83 billion nuna December. And the credit extended by the two state-owned banks to the CPC in foreign currency loans amounts to US $3.7 billion. With due consideration to such financial performance of the CPC, an immediate upward revision is essential to improve its rupee liquidity position. ඒ කියන්නේ මිල ඉහළ දැමීමකින් තොරව මේ රුපියල් හිගය විසඳ ගන්න බෑ කියලා. එයා යෝජනා කරනවා ඒ කාලේදී මිල ගණන් අනුව පෙට්‍රල් ලීටරයක් රුපියල් 33කින් සහ ඩීසල් ලීටරයක් රුපියල් 39කින් වැඩි කරන්න කියලා. මහා බැංකුව අපිට විතරක් නෙමෙයි මුදල් ඇමතුමාටත් මේ කාරණේ දැනුම් දීලා තියෙනවා. මේ ලිපියෙත් පිටපතක් මුදල් ඇමතුමාට එවලා තියෙනවා.
Meanwhile, Minister Gaman Pillai also offered an explanation on the functionality of the $500 million credit line extended by India for the purchase of petroleum products.
මුදලක් නෙවෙන්නේ අපිට ඩොලර් මිලියන 500ක් දක්වා වසරක ගෙවීමේ පදනම මත අපිට තෙල් මිලදී ගන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් අපේ ඒ මිලදී ගැනීම අපිට කරන්න ලැබෙන්නේ අප්‍රේල් මාසේ මුල සිට.
In the meantime, Chairman of the Public Utilities Commission, Janaka Ratnaik, is hopeful of not having scheduled power cuts over the weekend, provided that the necessary fuel is received by the Ceylon Electricity Board to operate their generators. Though the PUCSL had said earlier that there won't be power interruptions, he announced a scheduled power cut today, with generators capable of producing 400 megawatts of electricity being out of commission due to lack of fuel.
Last Tuesday, the Public Utilities Commission said that they are confident of providing uninterrupted power supply to the consumers until the rainy season in May. However, it was under the assumption that the power plants receive sufficient fuel to operate their generators and public reducing the electricity usage during peak hours. But today, the situation completely changed. The PUCSL announced scheduled power cuts during the day with 1-hour interruptions between 2:30 pm and 6:30 pm. and 45-minute power cuts between 6:30 pm and 9:30 pm. As such, the power supply was interrupted across Sri Lanka based on a schedule. Speaking at a media briefing this afternoon, PUCSL Chairman Janaka Ratnaik explained as to why a scheduled power cut was implemented.
We have come to a point where we have realized that we do not have enough oil to run our generators. Therefore, more than 400 megawatts generators are out of order at the moment. Therefore, we have no choice unless to implement a scheduled power scheduling. And today's issue is that the CB was unable to purchase the necessary diesel, naphtha and furnace oil due to inability to make their financial commitments.
When PUCSL chairman was quizzed whether this will continue or not, he had this to say.
මේ තත්ත්වය අපිට තීරණය කරන්න වෙන්නේ දවසින් දවස. ඒකට හේතුව තමයි දැන් අපි බැලුවොත් එහෙම අපිට අද මෙගාවොට් දැනට තියෙනවා 400ක පමණ ගැප් එකක් ඩිමාන්ඩ් එකයි සප්ලයි එක බලපුවාම ඒ අනුව අපි තමයි අපි ෂෙඩින් කරන්නේ. දැන් අපිට අද බේස් කොස්ට් එක මේ තත්ත්වයෙන් ගිලිලා ගියොත් එහෙම තෙල් සංචිත නැතුව මෙගාවොට් 600ක් පමණ ප්‍රමාණයක් අපිට නැති වෙනවා. අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා අපිට අවශ්‍ය නැප්තා සහ ෆර්නස් ඔයිල් අපිට පොරොන්දු වුණා බලශක්ති අමාත්‍යාංශයෙන් අද ඒක ලබා දෙනවා කියලා. එහෙම වුණොත් එහෙම අපිට පුළුවන් වෙනවා අක්‍රිය වුණු ජනන යන්ත්‍ර කීපයක් ආපහු ක්‍රියාවට නංවලා හෙටානිද මේ තත්ත්වය විසඳ ගන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. හෙටානිද මම ලොකු ප්‍රශ්නයක් ඇති වෙන්නේ නැහැ. මොකද අපිට තියෙන ඉල්ලුම අඩුයි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් සතිය දවස් වලට වඩා. ප්‍රශ්නේ තියෙන්නේ අපි කියන උපදෙස් අනුව මේ විදුලි පරිභෝජනය අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම අඩු කළ යුතු තැනකට අපි දැන් ඇවිල්ලා ඉන්නේ. විදුලි බලය කැපීම පිළිබඳව අද විතරයි කතා කරන්නේ. අපි හෙටානිද මම හිතන්නේ බොහෝ දුරට අපිට කැපීමේ අවශ්‍යතාවයක් නැති වෙයි. අවශ්‍ය ෆර්නස් ඔයිල් සහ නැප්ත ලැබුණොත්. හැබැයි සඳුදා දිනෙන් පටන් ගන්න සතිය මම හිතන්නේ පොඩ්ඩක් අපිට අමාරු වෙයි. මොකද අපිට ඇඩ්ජස්ට් වෙන්න වෙයි අපි කොහොමද මේක කරගන්නේ කියලා. ඒ අනුව අපි බලමු මේක කොහොමද අපි just in time මේ කියන්නේ කෙටි කාලෙම මේ ප්‍රශ්න විසඳගන්නේ කොහොමද කියන තත්ත්වයට අපි ඇවිල්ලා තියෙනවා.
We will see you shortly on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, former Defence Secretary Hemasri Fernando and former Inspector General of Police Puji Jayasundara were both acquitted from their respective cases pertaining to failure to prevent the Easter Sunday terror attacks today. The court said that the plaintiff failed to prove beyond reasonable doubt the allegation of murder through failing to act. Now, here's a more detailed look at the verdicts.
The Colombo High Court trial at bar today acquitted both former Defence Secretary Hemasri Fernando and former IGP Pujit Jayasundara from their respective cases pertaining to the Easter Sunday terror attacks. The Attorney General's Department has filed 2 separate cases with 855 charges each against the duo over criminal dereliction of duty by failing to prevent the attacks, despite there being sufficient intelligence of a pending terror attack. Following a lengthy trial, the High Court acquitted the duo without even calling for evidence from the defence, since the charges against them have not been proven beyond reasonable doubt. Announcing the verdict on the former Defence Secretary, Chairman of the bench Namal Balale said that when a defendant is being accused of failing to act, the presence of intention to that end too has to be proven. On this front, the Chairman of the bench said that the plaintiff failed. Meanwhile, member of the bench Mohammad Irshadin said that the plaintiff failed to prove beyond reasonable doubt its allegation of murder, though failing to act levelled against the defendant. He said, quote, "The first witness, former chief of the SIS, Nilantha Jayawardena, had accepted before court that the information he received weren't verified intelligence. It doesn't appear that information was 100% accurate. The evidence given by former State Minister of Defence Ruwan Wijewardena revealed that limits were imposed on the accused Defence Secretary pertaining to summoning personnel for the intelligence review meetings, owing to the political environment that prevailed in the country at the time. His evidence also revealed that the National Intelligence Chief also didn't have necessary powers. As such, there is no evidence to show that the State Intelligence Chief had given intelligence pertaining to the attack to the accused Defence Secretary." Unquote. He also said that the State Intelligence Service has failed to provide verified intelligence on the attacks. Meanwhile, member of the bench Aditya Patabandige said that the first witness, the chief of the State Intelligence Service, seems to have neglected duty and had attempted to pile it on the National Intelligence Chief. He said, quote, "It seems that the accused Defence Secretary was helpless pertaining to the decision-making due to the political situation that prevailed at the time and the internal issues within the government. This terror attack is a sensitive issue. Filing a case anyone pertaining to a sensitive matter sans proper investigation cannot be accepted. Better care should be taken when filing criminal charges against state officials. It is unjustifiable to only file cases against state officials when there is a political authority. As such, the plaintiff could have decided whether to proceed with the case or not, following what was revealed by the evidence of the first witness, the former SIS chief. The arrest of the defendant is also problematic." Unquote. Afterwards, declaring the verdict on the former IGP Pujit Jayasundara, chairman of the bench Namal Balale said that former State Intelligence Chief had failed to provide definitive information on the date and location of an attack, despite there being intelligence of a pending attack. He said, quote, "The former SIS chief gave evidence saying that attacks will take place at 8 locations within the Colombo suburbs. Though it was mentioned that churches and hotels will be targeted, definitive locations weren't given. It is difficult for the accused IGP to take a practical step on such information. As such, it seems that the defendant did not have sufficient time to prevent it, depending on the information he received." Unquote. Declaring his verdict, member of the bench Aditya Patabandige said, quote, "The evidence revealed that the former IGP passed on the information about a pending attack given by the former SIS to his subordinates to take necessary measures. It was revealed that the former SIS chief notified the head of state on matters on security. The SIS chief isn't the chief of police intelligence but of state intelligence. He had not discussed the information he received about an attack with the intelligence units of the tri-forces. He could have shared the intelligence. Not doing so is problematic. A person who knows the sequence of events well is the former Defence Secretary, but the plaintiff didn't call him for evidence. It seems that it wasn't done as it might have led to a disadvantageous piece of evidence being revealed pertaining to the plaintiff or the defence." Unquote. He added that the plaintiff failed to provide strong evidence that the accused IGP aided and abetted Zahran Hashim to carry out the attacks. As such, former IGP Pujit Jayasundara too was acquitted from the charges without calling for evidence of the defence.
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa believes that China deserves a special place in history for not attempting to invade another country and for not letting any other country bring it under its rule either. The remarks were made by the Premier during the celebrations worked off yesterday to mark the 65th anniversary of the China-Sri Lanka relations and the 70th anniversary of the Rubber Rice Pact. Also speaking during the event, the Minister of International Department of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China stated that China and Sri Lanka oppose anyone who tries to intervene in internal affairs of a country under the guise of human rights and diplomacy.
The Communist Party of China and many political parties of Sri Lanka held a conference to celebrate the 65th anniversary of the China-Sri Lanka diplomatic relations and also to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the Rubber Rice Pact at the Nelumpokuna Mahinda Rajapaksa Theatre yesterday. In a congratulatory message sent by Chinese President Xi Jinping, he underscored the mutual respect, solidarity and mutual assistance between the two countries during the past 65 years and their mutual support on issues involving each other's core interests. He said that the China-Sri Lanka relations have become a model of friendship and win-win cooperation between big and small countries.
As the world undergoes profound changes, the China-Sri Lanka relationship is also standing at a new starting point in the face of rising unilateralism, resurgent Cold War mentality, raging pandemic, and sluggish world economy. The spirit in the Rubber Rice Pact is as relevant as ever, which shall be further inherited and passed on. China will continue to provide our help to Sri Lanka to the best of our capacity in COVID response and economic recovery. We should promote practical cooperation for shared prosperity. We stand ready to work with Sri Lankan political parties to better use inter-party mechanisms such as BRI political parties joint consultation and political party plus cooperation, and better align the BRI with Sri Lanka's development needs. It is our hope that our high-quality BRI cooperation, represented by flagship projects including the Colombo Port City and the Hambantota Port, can deliver more benefits to the people. We should promote solidarity and coordination to uphold international justice. The more volatile the world is, the more should we seek stability through solidarity and progress through coordination. We firmly oppose any country to interfere in each other's internal affairs under the pretext of democracy and human rights, and reject Cold War mentality and zero-sum game.
We have to remember that the Rubberized Pact was the first trade agreement between two Asian countries when the world was fully Eurocentric. All our dealings and our agreements had to be with Europe. But for the first time, we did this economic relationship, and that's the relationship that has gone forward and built up. Today, Asia itself is becoming the growth center of the world, and China is a growth engine there. So it will be quite important for us to see the development as the next session of the Congress of the Chinese Communist Party takes place. So we are all agreed that multilateralism must prevail in the Indian Ocean and in the Pacific Ocean, and multilateralism must guide our thoughts. We can't move out of it. So if so, we will have a world that is certainly more tense and more prone to violence.
චීන ඉතිහාසයට තවත් වැදගත් තැනක් හිමිවන්නේ චීනය විශාල රටක් බව කවදාවත් කිසිම රටක් ආක්‍රමණය නොකිරීමයි. ඒ වගේම තමන්ගේ මාතෘ භූමිය මොනම විදේශ බලවේගයකටවත් යටත් කරන්නට ඉඩ දීලත් නැහැ. ලෝකය දෙවන ආර්ථික බලවතා බවට චීනය මේ වන විට පත් වෙලා අවසන් කියලායි මම විශ්වාස කරනවා. චීනය නිසාම සමස්ත ආසියාව වෙනසකට ලක් වෙලා තියෙනවා. චීනය නැගී සිටියේ ස්වශක්තියෙන්. ඒ වගේම රටවල් අතර තිබෙන මිත්‍රත්වයෙන්. චීනය අපගේ ඓතිහාසික මිත්‍රයෙක්. ඒ වගේම අව්‍යාජ මිත්‍රයෙක් බවත් කියන්න ඕන. චීනයේ වත්මන් ජනාධිපති ෂී ජින්පිං මැතිතුමා අපගේ පෞද්ගලික මිතුරෙක් වගේම ශ්‍රී ලංකාවෙත් හොඳ මිතුරෙක්. ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ සංවර්ධන ව්‍යාපෘතිවලට එතුමා අපට උදව් කරනවා. ශ්‍රී ජින්පිං ජනාධිපතිතුමාගේ ශක්තිමත් නායකත්වය යටතේ 2012 වසරේ පසුව චීනය නව යුගයකට පා තැබූ බව සඳහන් කරන්න ඕන. චීනයත් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවත් අතර තිබෙන මිත්‍රත්වය ඉදිරියටත් ශක්තිමත්ව පවත්වාගෙන යාම අපගේ අපේක්ෂාවයි. ඒ වගේම අපේ වගකීමයි කියලා අපි විශ්වාස කරනවා.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa urged the officials of the Sustainable Energy Authority to start taking proactive and practical measures to get sustainable development projects up and running. He added that the laws in the country are not meant to cause impediments to such activity, but rather to complement them.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa made a sudden inspection visit to the Sri Lanka Sustainable Energy Authority located down Ananda Kumaraswamy Mawatha in Colombo 7 this morning. The President had visited the authority in order to explore the potential of renewable energy sources such as water, solar, wind and biomass to generate electricity. The President told the officials that the laws are in place to curb corruption and irregularities and that the law is not an impediment in doing the right thing. The head of state emphasized that when doing the right thing, certain groups use various tactics to prevent it, and as such, there should be no room for such acts. He also instructed officials to consider only the national interest in the implementation of such targeted projects.
ඉක්මනට පටන් ගන්න පුළුවන්.
පුළුවන් සර් අපිට ප්‍රශ්න වගේක් තියෙනවා. රම්බපාවලිය මෙගාවට් 100න් ඒගොල්ලන්ට ඇත්තටම වාසියක් හම්බුන්නේ නැහැ කියන එක තමයි සර් මිනිස්සුන්ගේ හිතේ තියෙන්නේ.
මේ ලෑන්ඩ් එක තාම අරගෙන නැහැ.
ගන්න පුළුවන් ආණ්ඩුවේ වනේ සර් තියෙන්නේ. ආණ්ඩුවේ ප්‍රයිවට් තියෙනවා. ප්‍රයිවට් එකක් තියෙනවා. ගන්න පුළුවන් සර්. ගන්න කලින් අපි හරියට අඳුන ගන්න ඕන.
අපි දැන් අවුරුදු ගානක් තිස්සේ ඉඳගෙන අඳුර ගන්නවා.
නෑ නෑ ඒක
ඊට වඩා වැදගත් මේව කරන එක. දැන් මොකද මේකනේ අපිට most important එක. අපි bigger picture එක අපි තේරුම් අරගෙන ඒකට තමයි වැඩ කරන්න ඕන. නැත්නම් ඉතින් හැම ප්‍රොජෙක්ට් එකකටම කවුරුවත් කැමති නැහැ. කී දෙනෙක් තාම ඉන්නවද renewable energy ගැන අයිඩියා එකක් නැති මේ උගත් අය රටට අවශ්‍ය දේ බලලා ඒකට අවශ්‍ය දේ තමයි කරන්න ඕන.
Now taking a look at the Colombo Bourse, the all-share price index lost to 218.34 points to end at 12,134.04, while the S&P SL20 index of more liquid stocks ended at 4,140.65. following a loss of 83.98 points today. Market turnover was 5.1 billion rupees. Now here's Dimantha Mathi with a brief report on today's market performance.
Today also we are seeing another decline in the market as the ASPI dropped over 200 points, so we are starting to see a sizable correction in the Colombo Bourse. Even the S&P SL20 is down by around 80 points. The turnover levels is sizably healthy at 5.1 billion rupees, with the diversified financial sector leading the overall turnover levels. However, it is noteworthy to understand that there is a sizable decline in retail volumes, which can be identified by the number of transactions, which has dropped to now 31,000 levels. So we've seen in the peak the market moving in the range of 50,000 to 60,000 transactions. However, over the last 2 weeks has gradually been declining, and today is one of the lowest levels that we have seen in this overall bull market that we've witnessed over the last 2 years.
That's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.